just outside the studios by the courthouse. We have Representative RyanKiesel. Representative Kiesel, thanks for stopping in.
Thank you for having me. This is a good opportunity to be here as we're at the midweek or the midpoint in the legislative session. So this is a great opportunity to share some information about where we stand and what's left to come in the legislative session.
Well, it has been an intriguing session to say the least, and a lot of things being cast around about the economy. Talk a little bit about that and where you see us heading.
Well, we just had some recent numbers released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and those are preliminary numbers, but essentially what we're seeing is about 5.9% increase in foreclosures last month. Around 5.6 unemployment, that's up 1.8% from where we were a year ago today, and about $100 million less in revenue estimates coming in according to the State Treasurer's Department, or the Department of the State Treasurer. So what we're looking at is that the economic downturn that we're seeing nationally and globally is catching up with us here in Oklahoma.
And how is that going to affect me, somebody right here locally? How do those numbers really impact me?
I think the most immediate effect is that in those downturn numbers over the last month, we saw a 31,000 decrease, a number of 31,000 jobs decreased from the month before. So I think that's the most immediate impact, is that as that unemployment number is going up in Oklahoma, that we're seeing fewer and fewer jobs available for Oklahomans to take advantage of. You know, the good news is, and we have a couple of bright spots, is that one, even though we have these high employment numbers, we're still 7th in the nation, lowest unemployment rates, and we're going to be receiving some money to fill in some of those holes in our budget shortfall, which is effectively around $1 billion right now. We're going to be receiving some federal stimulus dollars that are going to help us fill that shortfall up. But I think that there are a few other things that we need to do at the state level to address this, and I think that first and foremost, fiscal responsibility starts in our own backyard, and that's why I've joined a few other legislators in proposing a travel freeze on all travel to conferences and out-of-state events for legislators. I have no doubt that these conferences at times serve a great purpose in educating legislators, but at a time when we're facing such a shortfall, I also think that it's prudent of us as legislators to say, no, we're not going to be doing anything, no unnecessary spending. I think second of all, when we talk about reining in spending in our own backyard, it's concerning recent news of staff in the President Pro Temp of the State Senate, Glenn Coffey's office, that he has a staff member, Fred Morgan, a former Oklahoma House of Representatives member, making $186,000. That's several times over what the average Oklahoman makes, and it's more than any elected official makes. It's more than the governor makes. So when we're talking about fiscal responsibility and fiscal restraint at the state level, I think that if we're talking about that and we're asking Oklahomans to start to pinch their pennies, and we're going to have to make budget cuts to state agencies, then we should also look at those cuts in our own backyard.
So two things I'd like to address in that I heard is, first of all, the number $1 billion, and I was confused on what that number applied to. Was that the number of dollars coming into the state from the stimulus, or is that the number of dollars we have in shortfall?
That's the number of dollars that we have in shortfall, is around $1 billion. Now, those are certified our certified revenue that we estimate each year has gone down each month. So that number could rise, and that's going to be, I think, the predominant issue as this legislative session continues, and as we get closer towards the end of May and the end of session, is going to be how do we fill the shortfall, what cuts are we going to have to make, and hopefully, and it's my full intent, and I think the governors and everyone that's thinking about this rationally, to not have to touch the rainy day fund this year.
And in that $1 billion, is that a budget deficit, or is that an income deficit to the state?
That's an income deficit, and I'm glad you brought that up, because there was a joint resolution passed just last week that would put to a vote of the people the ability to eliminate the budget, the balanced budget requirement in the state of Oklahoma. We're fortunate. We hear these stories about California having $1 billion shortfalls. Theirs aren't just shortfalls. Ours are money we expected to come in revenue, and it just didn't show up. This is California. States like California and Vermont actually spend into just like credit card debt. They have debt in billions of dollars, and not only are they having to figure out how to pay for their state agencies, how they're having to pay for roads and bridges and infrastructure and education and health care for their citizens, they're also having to figure out how do we service this massive debt that's growing and growing and growing. In Oklahoma, we have a very progressive constitution. and a Constitution that protects our tax dollars by saying we have to have a balanced budget. Now, this joint resolution that passed out of the House now heads to the Senate, I think is one of the most dangerous measures still alive in the state legislature today, because it could potentially take that balanced budget requirement away from the state of Oklahoma. And I think that in times like this, one of the reasons when we start looking at these economic numbers, one of the reasons that Oklahoma is doing as well as it is because that we're constitutionally mandated to practice fiscal responsibility. Each year we have to balance the budget. Sometimes that means making cuts to state agencies and crucial services. But I think that most Oklahomans would agree that cuts to those services and cuts to those agencies are preferable to running up billions of dollars in debt.
And that is a topic that I'm sure all of us have input for, whether or not we should go into debt, in essence, in this year of economic downturn, or shall we keep the budget balanced. That's something that you can have impact on simply by emailing or calling the representatives. Immediately following this video, you will see a phone number. Call, tell them where you're from. They will patch you through to your representative's office and let them know one way or the other, either you'd like a balanced budget, or I think we ought to start going into the credit mode. Yeah. And that's something that we all can impact. I encourage you to become involved. Also, in this same breath, I guess you mentioned that a office worker is making close to $200,000.
Close to, yeah.
And what's wrong with that? It's a business up there. It's run like a business. He's an executive. He has a lot of important things that he has to tend to. Talk a little bit about that.
I think first we have to look at the increase from previous staff, and that we have state employees in Oklahoma that are working hard. We have DHS workers in particular that are facing caseloads that are just enormous and prevents them from doing their job to the full extent of their ability. And these workers have not seen a pay raise. We have average Oklahomans that are working harder and harder and harder for less and less money, it seems, each month. And now we have this dramatic increase in salary for what is essentially a political advisor. I have no qualms at all with people being paid a good salary, and I have no doubt that this person earns that salary. But essentially, their role is a political advisor. And I think that most Oklahomans would be shocked to find out that their hard-earned tax dollars are going to pay this $186,000 salary for what is essentially a political advisor, and they're getting paid, and he's getting paid more than their governor, than their attorney general, than their lieutenant governor to make political calculations on behalf of a politician at the state capitol. I think that there are better uses of our tax dollars than this salary.
And that, of course, I guess clarify again who and where that would be. So if we want to get involved and we want our voices heard, we want to call the state senate and we want to talk.
And I think that the name of the individual is Fred Morgan. He's a former member of the Oklahoma House of Representatives, and I know Representative Morgan. I served with him for 2 years in the legislature. I think he's a fine and honorable individual. I just think that we need to question whether or not this is a wise use of our tax dollars. And the information, if you're interested in who makes what in your state government, go to the Office of State Finance website, which can be found at www.ok.gov. Go to the Office of State Finance, and you can search any state employee by their last name or their agency and find out what they're making. I mean, those are your tax dollars. You have a right to know what they're making, who's earning them, and if you feel that there's waste in certain instances, I would highly encourage you to call your legislator.
Very good information this morning, and it's a cold morning. I am shivering, Representative Kiesel.
Well, and it's pretty cold, but I think it's supposed to get in the 80s later this week. So, but this is a great morning compared to most Oklahoma mornings. We have hardly any wind out here.
Yes.
So while this is tolerable, if the wind were going, there's no way we'd be standing out here. We'd be inside with a hot cup of coffee.
That's exactly right. Thank you, as always, for sharing with us, and we hope to do this more often with your Representative RyanKiesel. Thank you very much, Representative Kiesel.
Appreciate it.